Welcome to 28.5 Women's Basketball, where we explore a unique and authentic perspective on the women's game, break down upcoming matchups, and discuss the latest news and trends in women's basketball. We are your hosts. I'm Sydney Story, and I played basketball at the University of Tennessee under Pat Summitt.
And I'm Becca Goodman, and I played at the University of Notre Dame under Muffet McGraw. And we're thrilled to have you join us today. Before we jump in, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoy what you hear, be sure to tune in each week and don't forget to follow, download, and listen to give an assist and share the love. Now let's get started with today's episode.
Becca, what's up? We have a fun team huddle ahead today. We have a special guest, Melissa Lechlitner.
So excited. So excited.
We are so pumped. We have been texting each other all day about how excited we are just to chat and catch up on some things. All right, let's remember what a team huddle is. And this is our third one that we've done. So just a refresher for those who haven't listened to the first two. We take some time and answer some fan questions that come in on our social medias. We've got a really good, well-thought question that came through, and we want to answer it today. And in order to answer it correctly, we've brought in another Notre Dame grad. And it's going to make sense because it's a Notre Dame type question. So a little juicy today. I'm excited for that.
Absolutely. Well, welcome, Lech, a.k.a. Melissa Lechlitner-Lewis. Thanks for popping on here. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. I've been an avid follower of your podcast. Excited to be here.
You know, when we saw this question, we had to bring in the big guns for this. So we knew we had to go to someone really legit to dive in. So first of all, I'm going to high level your intro, okay? I've known you for decades. Sid has known you longer, but I'm just going to point out like the good nuggets, some big chunks here that all roll up. But I need to tell everyone, within those big chunks, there's tons of accolades. If I had to look up all the accolades, I would probably still be searching, and this podcast is only like 40 minutes, max an hour. So I apologize, okay?
Oh, stop. You're killing me, but continue. Flatter me some more, please.
Go on. Okay, so Melissa Lechlitner-Lewis won a state championship in high school in 2005 at South Bend St. Joseph, an Olympic gold medalist in 2007, Notre Dame great point guard from 2006 to 2010, played overseas for 4 seasons, currently works for the University of Notre Dame's development team, is a wife, mother, and one of our very near and dear close friends who we love. I high leveled that. What an amazing intro. Like, I wish I had buckets I could pull from like that.
You do. Stop. You both do. Oh my gosh. Thank you. No, I appreciate that. We could do the exact same thing if we pulled your bios, which you guys probably should post on your Spotify page so everyone really knows how much greatness you guys did and currently are doing. But all the love. I know you mentioned it, but we've all been friends for a really long time. So excited to see you two excelling in the podcast space.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you, Lech. So for the listeners out there that don't know us, I'm Sid. We have Beck, and then we have Lech now. Melissa Lechlitner-Lewis. We call her Lech. So just so everyone's aware of the nicknames there, because I'm sure we're going to be bouncing back and forth quite a bit during the episode. I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about how we all have crossed paths several times over the years. Most of it obviously related to basketball, but it is kind of crazy how the three of us have interwoven basketball history here. So all three of us played on the same AAU team. Lech and myself started at a pretty young age. I started at 9. How old were you, Lech?
Yeah, probably about the same. I mean, on a bad team in 5th grade, but started in the same program as you probably when I was like 11, I would say.
Yeah, pretty young. And then Becca joined us. How old were you, Beck?
I was in like 9th grade, I think.
Okay. Yeah. So a little bit later, but we had all those golden high school years together. That's for sure. So AAU ball, traveling all summer, all the hard sweat equity that went into those practices for sure. And then Melissa, Lech, and myself played high school ball together at South Bend St. Joe. We were ranked 11th in the country at one point when we won the state championship in Indiana in 2005, which when you stop and think about that, now as I'm older, I look back, 11th in the country. Think about how many high school teams are out there. It's pretty.
I didn't even realize that, Sid, till you just said it.
I was trying to get over there. I was trying to figure out how can I go to St. Joe?
We
Who could I
tried. I
live
told
with?
you could have lived with me, but you turned me down.
We probably would have been ranked like number 1 in the nation if that was the case.
100%.
So good old high school ball led to college where Lech and Becca both played together at Notre Dame. They appeared in 2 Sweet 16s together, which is pretty cool, and got to play with Muffet McGraw or under Muffet McGraw and a lot of other fantastic players that went through Notre Dame, some of them that are still in the WNBA today. So really cool experience. Looking forward to hearing more about that as we dive into Notre Dame. And then you all both played in Puerto Rico overseas together for 2 seasons. Fast forward out of our playing days, Lech, Becca, myself coached high school ball together at South Bend St. Joe. And the first year when it was Lech and myself and Kristen Dockery, we won the state championship in Indiana. So pretty cool experience there. Then we had Becca join us and we learned a ton from Beck, bringing her on the squad, which was awesome. And then now Becca and myself, we coach AAU. We have an AAU team that we coach every spring and summer. And then we started 28.5 Women's Basketball Podcast. So really just wanted to kind of highlight how all 3 of us throughout the years stayed together and been able to learn from each other and grow with each other and play ball and coach together, which is pretty amazing when you stop and think about it. So
do you know when we were being AAU and even our parents, I think they'd say stuff like, you guys will know each other forever. You'll always look back decades from now. Guys, we're here. Like, it's decades later.
Yeah, we're the old ladies.
That's what was cool about our program, though. I mean, think about how many of us are still not even just friends, but like super close, best of friends. I mean, years later, decades later, like you said, Sid. I mean, it really was a special bond that we all had.
Let's jump into some get to know Lech questions. So obviously we both played at Notre Dame. I had given an overview of my Notre Dame basketball experience, but tell us some about yours. How did you feel about just the campus, your decision, your whole 4 years, good, bad, ugly, and all the best? What do you think?
You start from the recruiting. Like, give people the true deep dive, walk all the way through it, spend 5 minutes if you want on it. I think it's like awesome for people to hear the journey from the start of recruitment all the way through. So spill the beans.
Well, I was a hometown kid, right? I grew up 25 minutes from campus. It was that cliche, like it was always my dream school. It was always my top school, right? We all know during AAU and the recruiting tournaments, like there are tons of schools, tons of coaches. You're getting lots of looks. But I always knew, like deep down, I wanted to go to Notre Dame, and it was kind of it for me. And so, Muffet offered me my sophomore year, and I took like 2 weeks to think about it and really stew on it. And, a lot of people, they would get an offer and they would wait and wait, and they wanted to take official visits and go visit all these campuses. But I had talked to other coaches, and because of our AAU schedule and travel, we had been to a ton of campuses already. And so I took 2 solid weeks, and I was like, why wait? Like, I know that this is what I want. And it was a dream come true for me. So committed sophomore year, which saved me a ton of stress. And, I think it's really hard for some high school kids, right? It's a pressure cooker, and you got to get the grades and figure out which school's for you, and trying to figure out who's going to offer and the whole thing. Now it's totally different with NIL and everything else that's involved. But
did you have a top 3 or top 5, or was it always just Notre Dame and kind of everything else was a blur?
No, we both really liked Maryland, and Coach Freeze. I mean, she's still there doing great things. So that was a school that was always really attractive for me. Christy Curry at Purdue. I knew I didn't want to go too far. California was definitely not going to be something that I envisioned for myself. But really, I had my short list, and once Notre Dame offered, it was like, this is perfect, right? They had the championship in 2001. I graduated high school in 2006, so they were still a great program, and Coach McGraw and her coaching staff. And, it was more than just basketball too, right? Like Notre Dame's that tagline's 4 for forever, right? I mean, you've got 4 incredible years, but it's the post-graduation, utilizing the Notre Dame network for careers and, mentorships and relationships. So it's that bonus effect for Notre Dame that was just the end all be all for me. So it's kind of what did it. And, I got there and had an awesome 4 years. Freshman year was tough.
Like, let's back it up though. You got there. And I lived this with you. Like, for the listeners out there who maybe have kids or young teenage females or even guys that want to play at the next level, if you could summarize what the average week looked like for you trying to get to this level, like what does that even look like before you're even stepping on campus and signing a national letter of intent?
Yeah, well, I had the best workout partner in Sydney Smallbone, aka Sydney Story here on I mean, like, I'm not kidding you, to the listeners out there. We worked out together every single day. In the summertime, it was morning workouts on the track or in the weight room, and then straight to the gym for basketball drills and jump shots. When it was in school, it was as soon as school ended, we were straight to the gym, drill after drill, one-on-one. I mean, it was everything, right? We'd play pickup. We went to Notre Dame to play pickup a lot and tried to, up the level of competition, but it was a grind. And that was one thing, like, I think, right, there's extreme talent and there's extreme dedication. And I was definitely an extremely dedicated player who, I was talented, but, my strengths were leadership and kind of working and crafting my skills as I got older. So it was a ton of hours in the gym, film, right? The whole thing. I wish I would have done more film. I think that kind of got added in later. Now it's such an emphasis. There's so many resources for it, but it was a grind. Like we were definitely dedicated, Sid. And I mean, you even more than me. There were days where I was just like, oh my gosh, it's a struggle to get motivated to start the workout, but I swear you were just like every day ready to go. It was very admirable.
There's nothing like it in your life, right?
Oh, 100%.
Nothing has come close. I mean, motherhood, your career is obviously very important, being a wife, all that. But I'll throw Becca in there too, because Becca, I mean, you didn't live by us, so you didn't work out with us every morning and all that stuff, but you busted your butt in those practices, and I'm sure you were back in Wheeler throwing up a lot of shots. And
y'all,
I mean, all of us did, right?
Wheeler is not like our AAU team. I tried to bring a little like, this is what we did. It was not the same. Let's just say this. Hey, I want to go back to knowing both of your personalities. You played one-on-one, correct?
All the time.
How did this go? Was there ever a testy moment of like, I mean, I know your personalities and I know I can only imagine this one-on-one. Man, if this was on film, I would love to see this.
I know. To be a fly on the wall and go back to those years.
I think it was the worst when our coach would get thrown into the mix and we'd be like one-on-one on one. I mean, Sid, we definitely had some days for sure. But oh man, if there was like another person in the mix, remember Chicago 2-on-1 or God, it would get. Yeah,
I think you beat me most of the time, probably.
I don't think that's true.
I think so. And then one time I beat you back to back and you were like, roll it up, check it up again. I was like, all right, let's go.
I'm surprised I didn't walk out of the gym.
No, it was that thing that you're like, I'm not, until I beat you, we're not leaving. And I'm like, okay, here we go.
I actually don't remember that. I wish I did. One day, I couldn't even drive yet. So I was probably 14 years old. And I just had like the worst day. Stormed out of the gym, got into my mom's car, and I probably started bawling. I'm not like details are fuzzy, but she was just like, "What is wrong?" And I was like, "Just drive." When you're just
drive, get me out of here.
Teenager. Yeah, I'm like, get me the hell out.
That's exactly what I'm hitting at. Those like people don't realize how much time, and it's not just like, oh, I'm in the gym getting shots up. It's like, no, I'm in the gym busting my butt for the next hour and a half. That's how you're like really separating yourself, doing the right drills, going 110% game speed, and not really taking days off. I mean, that we didn't. It was like, I remember my parents being like, hey, you need to take a couple of days off. We're not taking you to the gym. And I'd be like, yeah, well, I'm going to walk there. So should I start walking? I'm like, seriously, that's how crazy dedicated we were.
Yeah, but then you get to college, which is its own transition and adjustment of its own, right? But like, I didn't feel like I was overwhelmed or like that, the workouts kick your butt, but I didn't feel like I couldn't hack it or hang. Like everything that we did totally prepared me in the right way for college.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were going to talk about your freshman year. So you're on campus now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure we all have, right? Freshman year, it's just an adjustment. you are not this star player. At least I wasn't, right? Like I went from starting like every game I've ever played essentially to coming off the bench. And I mean, I played like over 20 minutes a game, but it was an adjustment and I just was not used to it. And classes and the amount of time and study hall and the mental aspect of college and that level and the speed of the game and the basketball IQ with film and scouting. And like, it was definitely an adjustment. Honestly, like freshman year was my least favorite. I really think it took Becca coming to campus to really make my experience better. I had a great experience. Like, it's not even like I had played over 20 minutes game. I averaged a decent amount of points as a freshman, but it was just like, I don't know. I didn't like, it was hard. Like, it's just hard.
It's definitely an adjustment. Plus, with the season, it's so much longer and there's so many pieces of the season. Like right now, we're calling it the grind. There's upsets galore in women's basketball just because you're at that conference level playing consistently where wins matter at this point. You're going to turn around, have conference play, then you get a seed for the tournament. So it's absolutely a grind and something that I don't think you really can prepare for. The amount of consistency and basketball that just comes your way.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Our AAU really, it prepared us a lot for it. I remember asking you specifically, hey, are practices going to be better or like worse than AAU? And I think she was like, it's just going to be different. But if you can survive AAU, you'll be fine. I was like, okay, thank you. Thanks, Leck.
Well, what'd you think when you got there, though? Better, worse,
the
same?
I thought it was just different. It was just different.
So playing for Muffet McGraw, who I think is one of the best coaches to ever do it, men or women, what is one of the things that she did to be so successful every day? And a couple of things maybe that really separated her as a coach.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, one of the greatest out there. To me, it was, again, her basketball IQ. Liken it to Pat Summitt, I'm sure, Sid. But the way they study the game and, right, like, to be a successful coach, you need to be obsessed with the sport. And that's film constantly. That's talking to your assistants, talking to colleagues and peers in in your conference and outside your conference. But her level of detail, like especially as a point guard, she, had great relationships with point guard. That was her leader on the floor. So for me, from the point guard position, and I was in control of a lot, right? Our offense, calling everything, defenses, the whole thing. And it was just like the level of detail that she had. And it was just the smallest things that just made an incredible difference. Like, a team's playing zone defense. This is like probably a really basic example, but if they're in a 2-3, if you're standing at the top of the key elbow, just taking 2 dribbles over puts the defense in a spot where you're like in the gray area. Is it the top or is it the back line? Who's going to bump, right? Like that's going to be sometimes a hairy issue for teams because of the lack of communication, because you're kind of in that gray zone, just like really simple things that you completely overlook. But like when you sat down with her, or like the way she broke things down in practice, like especially for me, again, at the point guard position, like that was the thing that I was always blown away with by her. She was always so prepared. She always, and just her experience, right? But to me, if I could just boil it down to one thing, it was definitely her IQ and the level of detail that she put into it.
Yeah, that was one thing with Coach McGraw. The devil's in the details. She always had me watching film. Film doesn't lie. Film is the proof. So I 1,000% agree with you, Lek, that her attention to detail, whether it's a play, whether it's film, whether it's scout, just overall preparation absolutely set her aside. And she stood out for that reason. She was amazing at it, without a doubt. Let's jump into sophomore year and then roll with us to junior, senior, where now you're a vet, you're team captain, and things are coming a little easier to you now, right? But let's start with that sophomore year. What really sticks out there?
This sounds so silly, but literally, like you, Britt, and Dev were I'm not kidding, you guys were the freshman class. And here's the thing about basketball. For me, right, it was a huge part of my life. I don't even know how long I played. I mean, probably from like 8 until I was 25-ish. So almost 20 years of basketball. But it did so much for me, right? Mentorships, right? My job now, everything just kind of like falls into place. But it was always about the relationships and the people that I played with. And to this day, some of my best friends are you guys who I played AAU with, some of my college teammates, right? Like it's basketball people. So it sounds so stupid, but all right, sophomore year was it like it became a lot more fun. Like, Becca's one of my best friends to this day. We played AAU together and now she was on my college team and we got to hang out and Britt and Dev and the same thing. So, and I'm super close with my class that I graduated with, but it just added a little more fun, right? And I think sometimes your freshman year it's easy to forget that part of it, right? You're just so focused on everything and doing it right, and your schedule's so crazy you don't have time to think about other things. So yes, I started to enjoy basketball and life a little more sophomore year. And then yeah, junior year, of course, right? You're third year now, and I was a starter and captain and definitely had the confidence. I think that's something probably every freshman lacks a little bit of, and it's such a huge piece of being successful. So yeah, junior year started yeah, it was great. Everything, and again, everything was great. It's just each year was a little different and nuanced.
Yeah. And let's keep in mind, as you're going through your 4 years, you also managed to fit in winning a gold medal. How does this even play in? When did you go? I know, but I want you to tell everybody listening and tell us where it was, what games it was, and where it all went.
Yeah, so sophomore summer, I made the Team USA under 19 team. And so, our first tournament was in the Canary Islands, in Spain, which was awesome. You're kind of gelling. We had a really good team. Maya Moore, remember her, played at UConn. She was on the team.
Sure do.
Jantel Lavender played at Ohio State. So Angie Bjorklund, your future teammate, said. So it was great. And then the games were actually in Bratislava, Slovakia, which was definitely an experience. Canary Islands, I preferred a little more, but yeah, no, it was awesome. I didn't play a ton on that team, but won a gold medal, got to represent our country, which, arguably one of the greatest honors from my basketball career standpoint. So yeah, it was awesome to be a part of. And again, right, you're just like travel. Yeah, I was overseas for the first time for 2 straight weeks, and definitely a good growing up part of your life and experience. So it was really fun.
Yeah, and let's talk about what it takes to make one of those teams, right? So it's invite only, because I went twice and tried out also in Colorado Springs. The first time I made the alternate team, but they select 10 full roster girls. So if you think about basketball, there's 5 positions. So there's 2 for each position, and then there's 5 players that are alternates. At least that's the way that it was when we went through it. It might have changed since now. So invite only, it's the top players ish, we'll say, in America that get invited. Then you go through this grueling tryout where it's multiple days of a selection committee watching you. The head coach of the team is there, and it's a process, right? They're evaluating everything, how you play with certain players. Can you hang, basically, is a big piece of it. Mm-hmm. So when you stop and think about that, Lek, you're a point guard. That means you are one of the best point guards in the country for your age. Which, when you think about all the girls that play basketball in our country, that is like an amazing thing to think about. So that's a pretty cool thing right there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, the tryout was intense. And then after Colorado Springs, we went to American University. So they cut it down to like 15, I think, from there. And then, like you said, like it's all of it, right? It's beyond talent and skill. It's leadership and culture and how are you going to fit together as a team? Like, I think the average viewer of sports doesn't understand how important that component is. But that was, I mean, if I had to say anything, I made that team because of my leadership and my ability to, play well and be a good teammate. It clearly wasn't because I was the most skilled player, but every team needs a communicator, a leader, all of those things. And that was 100% like the reason I made that team. Because like you said, it was super competitive and it was an extremely talented roster. So I was grateful to be part of it.
Yeah, I remember getting off the plane and going to baggage claim. And it was the first time I had seen Elena Delle Donne in person. And she was huge.
Yeah.
And I'm like, doesn't she play the guard spot? Like, I was like, I'm in over my head here.
Oh my gosh.
And sure enough, in tryouts, I'm like, yeah, she can play the 1 through the 5. she's like the best player out here, in my opinion. I mean, Maya Moore was amazing, right? She's Maya Moore. Yep. She was a huge leader. She talked her, all her action was super mature in that way. But Elena Delle Donne was like, nobody could stop her.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some players that we grew up with. We're dating ourselves a little bit, but like that was our generation. Those are some of the best players that have ever played the game, really, which is pretty cool.
I totally agree. Well, I do, and then I watch today, like Hannah Hidalgo.
Yeah, right, they're great.
Right, and then I'm like, holy, I would have gotten run off the floor, like with these players. I was talking to Neil about that, Coach Ivy. Yeah, I don't know, probably a month or two ago. Actually, it was right when they were playing out at USC, because I was on the trip, and we were just talking about that evolution of players, and I'm like, am I crazy? Are they fat? Like everything just feels so much faster. And she's like, 100%. Like it is so different. These girls are so athletic. Like the game has evolved. So I'm glad I don't have to play now. That's for sure.
Who were your coaches on that team?
Doug Bruno from DePaul was the head coach. Carol Owens was an assistant. Cynthia Cooper was an assistant. I think it was those three. There was one more woman who I cannot place from like a smaller school.
And the selection committee is like stacked, right? Dawn Staley was on it even back then. Tara Vanderveer, like it's some of like the best coaches and ex-players standing there critiquing you. It's pretty cool.
It is a really cool process, actually. Now that I never like reflect on it. It's fun to talk to you two and think about all of that.
Inquiring minds want to know, where is that gold medal right now? Because I've never even seen this.
Yeah, well, it's funny. So Notre Dame had it for a while, and it was in the display case with my jersey. And then I'm old, so they updated the graphics and everything. And for a very long time, somebody had reached out. This is before I worked there. Somebody had reached out, and they had my jersey, but nobody could find my gold medal. And I was like, that's kind of important. Long story short, it was somewhere buried in storage. And so I have it now. It's actually in my office, hanging on my wall, which sounds so.
No, I can't believe it was in a storage room.
Yeah,
Come
no,
on,
I was
ND,
like,
what are you doing?
Yeah, right. Come on, guys. That thing's worth at least 35 cents.
Stop.
That's nothing to Notre Dame now. Come on. No, I'm just kidding.
Love it.
All right. So after you've had 4 full years at Notre Dame, you've won a gold medal. You now go and play overseas. Tell us a little more about that, where you were, how long you were there, and just how was it being abroad?
First year was in Germany. Second year was Iceland. Third year was Puerto Rico, then Finland, and then back to Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico's the season is a little shorter. It starts like in August and you're done pretty much right around Thanksgiving. So then I could go play in Finland for the second half, and then I went back to Puerto Rico. It was awesome. I absolutely loved it. My first year was really hard. Germany, my team was really cliquey. You know, it was kind of like the foreigners and then the Germans. And I kind of just thought that's how like overseas life was. So I'm really, really glad I continued to play and experience some different countries and teams, because it just ended up being that my first year was my least favorite from like a team. But I traveled a ton and I loved that part of it, and just like experiencing other cultures and people and food, and right, like it was just a blast. Like I truly loved it. And you're getting paid to play the game that you love. Like it's the peak of athletic performance. So that piece was awesome. Hands down, everyone always asks, like, oh, what was your favorite? It's not even fair. It's truly like an apples to oranges comparison. Like Puerto Rico, Beck and I, you're like living with your best friend. We had a condo on the beach. Like it was the good life. We had a ton of fun. So Puerto Rico was definitely my favorite, but being in Europe was really awesome just because you were so close to everything. I mean, you could drive 2 hours and you could be in a different country, and just traveled a ton. My first year in Germany, a good friend of mine, Michelle Weisenhofer, who played soccer at Notre Dame, she was over there too. So we were really lucky. We lived like 20 minutes from each other. So every off day we traveled together, and it just made everything a lot easier. But the first year was tough. Again, dating myself, but like it was back when there wasn't internet everywhere. Like most restaurants didn't have internet, and like, remember internet cafes? Like, it was so stupid. So my first week over in Germany, my apartment didn't have internet yet, and I didn't have a phone to like even let my mom know that I had arrived safely. And then you get like, the old school, like I don't even know what they're like, not a flip phone. And then you like upload money with the car. I mean, it feels so crazy to say that, but it was different. So Skype was a lifesaver. Beck and I had some nice like 4 a.m. Skype dates, and you're just on a weird schedule. You're up late and you're talking to everybody back home, but it was so fun. I'm very glad I did it. Totally fell like back in love with the game of basketball the more I continued to play. And yeah, it was a great experience.
I think that's something that they do overseas to see if you can hang. Because every person I've talked to, they know when we're coming. How do we not have internet?
I
that is
know.
our lifeline. And it can be
Lifeline.
weeks, it can be months. In Finland, they were like, oh, it'll be like max a month. I'm like, a month? We're at McDonald's hanging out until they close. Like it was. So I think that's crazy that almost everybody that I've talked to about it that played overseas, they always seem to have some sort of initiation when it comes to inactivity.
That's, I guess people don't also realize that is the only entertainment you have, right? You can't bring a bunch of books over with you. You don't have room in your suitcase. Like it is internet and your computer. So it is very important. And like, I was like, can someone please just email my mother and let her know I'm alive? Like that was, Lori needed to know.
Valid ask. That's all that was.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're gonna wrap the playing days here and jump into the meat and the guts of the team huddle. So we're gonna go back on this one. This one came from an episode that we had posted around Thanksgiving timeframe, just after Thanksgiving, and it comes from a fan who posted directly on our Spotify account in the episode. And we apologize, we don't have the name here, but the account is VA. So apologies if VA is listening to this and wants to hit us back with their name, we can hit them up later and give the shout out to the name later. But this question specifically is directed at Becca and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. So hence why we brought Lek on to also help answer this one. But the question is, Becca, big fan of ND, 2 concerns. One is the half-court offense. We can't expect to always run. I understand she, meaning Neil Ivey, wants to do that, but against good teams, you're going to have to play half court. Where is the cutting? I think she had abandoned a lot of the principles Muffet had in place, which I don't understand. To me, players will do what you tolerate. Demand ball movement, cutting, etc. Also, recruiting is a concern. 3 one-player classes in 5 years is not going to cut it. Lack of posts. So I'm going to turn this one over, and Becca, why don't you take this and take the lead on this and dive in with Lek?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the question for sure. A lot of pieces there. So I'm going to try to break it down, pull some questions out and see if we can get this answered. Lek, specifically, do you have any concerns with Notre Dame's current half-court offense? Thoughts on it overall? We all know Notre Dame likes to get out and run. We have Hannah, we have Liv. I mean, that's their bread and butter. Do you have any concerns of them in the half-court?
So my first thought is, when your fast break is so good, it makes a half-court offense look less than, right? Like subpar. We are clearly the best transition team in the country with Hannah and Olivia, like no question about it. But I mean, VA, he or she has some good points. I do think we struggle a little bit half court. I think there have been some games where it's been pretty close for a while, and I think the half court offense has been our struggle. Obviously, defensively, they're insanely good, and transitions also insanely good. So, if you had to pick an area of weakness, it's going to be the half court offense. But that being said, I'm still not overly concerned about it, right? I mean, shooters have off nights, but we've got some of the best players in the country on that floor.
Yeah, I agree with you. Sometimes our half court looks a bit stagnant. Like we go one-on-one and we have great players on our team now. So, it's not just one, we have like 4 and they're on the court at the same time. So when someone's about to break somebody down, go one-on-one, you clear out, you give them room, but then you react if defense rotates over, right? So valid concern for sure. If you were obviously in an opposing team, their goal would be to slow down Notre Dame, to get them to play in the half court, right? So
100%.
How do you combat that if the team's strategy, their scout is slow Notre Dame down, get them to walk the ball up, play in the half court.
Continue doing what they're doing, right? Defense creates offense, get up and run. But I still think our half court is still good, right? I think there's room for improvement, but like you said, right, there's such talent that, if Hannah's going to go, you're kind of going to let her go. You don't want to try and cut and create movement when she's about to tack and make something happen for the team. So it's a delicate balance, right? When you have talent like that can just create versus setting up a really structured offensive half court or a play and, trying to execute in that way.
Yeah, this is an interesting one for me, having scouted you all back in the day and been on the other side of it, right? With Muffet's offenses and what you all used to do. I remember spending a few practices scouting the Princeton offense and all the movement that you had, the handoff action, the read-react action. Mm-hmm. That is very hard to guard. Like, you can't really prepare for that other than the fact it's coming, right? So is that something Niele is going away with, or we just aren't seeing it as much because they're so successful in that transition? And that's the point you're making, Lech. Like, do that first. And then if you have to run that half-court offense, then that's your, default, especially with Miles and Hidalgo. And the speed we talked about, right? It's just a different game also. But is that Princeton offense something that it's still in their tool bag that they can run in that half court?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Sid. They definitely still have Princeton. They still have Chin, a ton of the same offensive themes that Coach McGraw ran. And now Niele is just sprinkling in different plays and one-hitters and things that she took away from the NBA when she coached. So to your point, right, yes, they are doing all the same things, but when we played, we had to run Princeton almost every possession because our transition game was not great. It was, before Skylar got there, and then now pre-Jewel Lloyd and Hannah and Olivia, right? We didn't have that type of transition game that they have now. So we were 75% of the time probably running a Princeton set and a half-court structured offense because that was our strength. Versus this team, it's the total opposite, right? You're going, you're running, you're letting them create and giving them the freedom. But that being said, they still have Princeton, they still have Chin, and a ton of the same offensive sets and themes with, Niele's NBA expertise added in on top of it.
And I think it's interesting. Hannah specifically, she crashes the glass. So you have a point guard or a two, it depends who has the ball at the time, right? Crashing the glass to get the ball, to get it out quick. As a post player, knowing that this is our offense and this is how we run, this is how Leah Tu King has made a killing and why she is the biggest asset that Notre Dame has added, because she is so hungry for the board. She just has a nose for it on the offensive end and on the defensive end. And when she does that, blocking out, rebounding, getting boards, she gets it out so they can run. Worst case if Hannah or a guard doesn't get it. So there's many pieces to it. It's not so much just, hey, the guards are going to run. Is there a concern they can't do that, right? There's everybody playing their role every possession to ensure that your team and the five that are out there are successful and go with the gameplay, right?
It is interesting because I think they've relied so much on that transition. It's a great point, because if a team does slow them down, are they a little bit out of that rhythm of having to learn and be able to score out of that half-court offense? And I think the comment, to me, one of the best parts of this comment that I thought was good and worth exploring is when VA says, to me, players will do what you tolerate. And I think that's really interesting. To me, Olivia Miles, Hannah Hidalgo, and absolutely they should, but they have the green light to do whatever they want on the floor. So there's that tolerate word. We're used to the old school coaches, the Pat Summits, the Muffet McGraws, where you fell in line with that system, whether you were Candace Parker, Jewel Lloyd, Sydney, Melissa, or Becca. And in this case, I think, and then maybe there were some exceptions, but I think in this case, you see Hannah and Olivia absolutely take over games. And so I think it's a positive thing. I'm not saying it's a negative thing, but when you are faced with the adversity of a team that figures out how to slow you down, who steps up, who has the maturity to put the ball on their hip like a good old school point guard and figure out how to get a bucket when somebody's flat out D'ing you up in the half-court offense. I'm not saying those girls can't do it, but there's not been a ton of teams that have really been able to slow them down yet. Do we see it in the tournament and maybe it's a little bit too late and they're not as good as executing out of it? I don't know. I don't think so. I think Hannah Hidalgo and Olivia Miles are actually that good. But maybe you see somebody like a Sonia Citron on the wing, who also is another huge offensive threat for Notre Dame that steps up in that game and kind of covers that. I think that's some of the interesting part to me is I think Notre Dame traditionally is that what do you guys call it? Guard university, I think is like the
Guard
what everyone's
you.
saying.
Guard you,
Right? Like you run and go as your guards go a lot, especially right now with having the best backcourt in the country. But I think you nailed it also, Becca. I think Leah Tu King is capable of going off for 20 points and 15 rebounds if she wants to. You got Kate Cavall, who's young, but if they need to get in that half-court offense and if they're disciplined enough, I do think they can get the buckets they need to get. But we have seen a few times this year where they struggle if they are locked up in the half-court and they're trying to go back to that one-on-one play.
You said it, Sid. Like, my concern is not so much the half-court offense. It's when the game is on the line, right? You're down to the wire. It's tied. It's a 1-point lead change game, right? Think like NCAA Sweet 16, where tons of pressure. Like, I'm not worried about someone being able to step up and score. My thing is like, do they have the leadership? The person, and I don't know who that person is. You would think it would be Olivia or Hannah being point guards, but when you need somebody to bring your team together to rally the troops, like, do we have that? Because if you want to win a national championship, that is a key piece that you have to have. And that's my concern as watching. Like, I'm like, half court offense. Okay, they'll figure out a way to score. I'm not worried about that. But like when their backs are against the wall, do they have somebody that's going to be able to step up and kind of lead them to victory in that way?
Yeah, I completely agree. In the Louisville game that they just played, you saw a bit of it being stagnant, right? We didn't have much offensive presence rolling because Louisville's defense was so good. So I don't doubt, right? We talked about this earlier. Niele is digging into that film. With NC State coming up, Florida State coming up, this last little pieces of the ACC. That if that playbook is even out there where they could possibly see it, slow him down, get him in a half court, she's going to exploit it, highlight it, and try to make plays out of it. So I don't doubt it's an area they obviously talk about, are aware of, and want to get better at. But like you said, as of right now, that transition game is just, it's good. It's too good.
Scary good.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth calling out. This is a little bit of a dated comment at this point, right? This was around just after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Notre Dame since then has played and beaten some really tough opponents, right? Think about non-conference play and who they've beaten. UConn, Texas, USC. I mean, they have run and beat with some of the toughest teams in the country. So it didn't stop them in those games, but you see the blips like TCU and when they're on the road in a little bit of different environment, what can happen. So, and no team's perfect, right? I mean, maybe UCLA right now because they haven't lost, but certainly they haven't won every possession. I think you strive for perfection at this point, and if that's something that you need to work on a little bit, I think you all said it. Niele knows it, right? She studies this game. This is her life right now. I would be shocked if they're not working on half-court offense in every practice, right?
Yeah.
At some point,
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Let's jump into the last part of that comment, more around recruiting concerns. 3 1-player classes in 5 years. Is it sustainable? And do we need a post player? I feel like this question kind of comes up often, but I also think Notre Dame is very different post players than a lot of other teams. So, Lek, what do you think of that question?
I think the first thing is recruiting is really complicated nowadays. Like, think about it. You have to recruit high school players. You are recruiting transfer portal. You are recruiting grad transfers who are going to come in, play for 1 year, right? So Leah Tu King, Liza from Marquette. And now with NIL, you have to actively recruit your current roster. Like next year, Hannah Hidalgo, someone might recruit her away with, a really nice check, and Notre Dame's going to lose like potentially the greatest player, right? That could happen with NIL. And so recruiting is ultra complicated. So I think when they say 3 1-player classes, if you just take that for what it is, yes, that would be concerning. But think about what Niele has done, right? She's brought in transfers and grad transfers, and it's you have to think of the whole pie versus just like this one sliver and one recruiting class, because everything is so complicated. There's so many layers to it, and it's now just a 24/7 job recruiting with, high school, and parents are getting involved with the recruiting process at NIL. So it's just really layered. So I don't think that's entirely accurate, right? 3 1-player classes, just because of the transfers and everything else that's involved with it. So I have all the faith in what Coach Ivy's doing. I'm not concerned about her ability to recruit, right? She's literally one of the best recruiters in the country. She's a player's coach. Everybody loves her. Like, if you play for her, you just get it. So I'm definitely not concerned about that, but it's just really layered. The recruiting is not like it used to be, where you were recruiting freshmen and sophomores in high school and occasionally a junior before they recruited, and it was just really simple and straightforward, and now it's not. So that's kind of my perspective on it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't envy college coaches these days. I mean, it's absolutely insane. You have to be that player's coach, or you might have that player who goes, "Oh, I feel like I'm not getting treated well enough. I'm out of here."
Yeah.
Right? Like you have to really watch kind of how you're coaching every different player who's motivated differently, who reacts to different things different ways. And I think that's something that we didn't do. Our generation didn't do that, right? It was like seen as like a bad thing almost if you transferred, right? It was like, oh, she's transferring, she didn't make it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and so now you see players jump every year, like a Haley Van Lith. To me, maybe where part of this is stemming from is some of the depth issues. Right. Again, the comment's a little bit dated. It's our fault. We took a few months here to get to it. But at this point, Maddie Westbelt was out and there wasn't a lot of depth in the post. And so maybe that's part of it, is like, are they a couple people short? And do they actually need to, whatever recruiting looks like nowadays, do they need to beef up the roster a little bit with a couple extra post players? Like, what are you guys' thoughts on that?
Who needs a post player?
That's enough. I set those screens for you, Melissa.
Oh, just bring in all the guards. We're fine.
I just think there's just different styles of play, right? Coach McGraw, I think she liked a lighter post number. I think she liked and relied on the guards. Like, that's fair. But then you have those ones that come around, right? Ruth Riley, Jackie Batiste, Jessica Shepard. Right? So you have these ones that stand out for those reasons, because they were able to produce and help and brought a different style to the game, but within Coach McGraw's offense of Princeton, right? And even in Princeton, I think Coach used post players a little differently. They were a bit more of a passer, or they were a bit more bring the post defense out so that we can get cuts and movement from behind. So there's different rhymes and reasons. And I just want to add another layer to the recruiting in general. It's Notre Dame. Let's not forget they're there for school. I know that we slightly forget this with the NIL thing, but there's a higher GPA requirement at Notre Dame. So some people who want to transfer, their classes might not carry over. So that there's always issues or concerns, or the actual academic piece of that we have to finish up. So, and make sure they're eligible.
That piece is actually very difficult. Like transfers coming in, and a lot of kids take online classes. Those don't transfer over to Notre Dame. So it's extremely difficult. I don't think people understand a lot of those details. So great point, Becca.
Lots of good dissecting that question. Again, thanks to VA for submitting that one, and apologies for taking so long to answer it. But I think we did it justice, which is great. Let's jump into the next section here. We have a rapid fire buzzer beater Q&A session lined up for Lech here. We're going to go 7 quick questions. If you want to spend a second or two to think about them, go for it. But then just really make it rapid fire and answer them as quickly as you can there. Okay. So number 1 here, if Notre Dame doesn't win the Natty this year, who's going to win it?
South Carolina.
Who's your pick for the GOAT in college or in the WNBA?
Oh, I hate saying it because it's a UConn player, but I'm going DT, Diana Taurasi.
Old school, but she brings it to the new
school.
Still
hooping 20-some years later.
Insane for sure. Number 1 quality a point guard needs to have.
Easy. Leadership.
Thoughts on NIL? For it or against it?
I'm for it. Needs to be some legislation and some rules around it, which is coming in April. But yeah, it's been crazy. But in general, I'm for it.
What was your least favorite, aka the worst basketball drill you had to do at Notre Dame?
First thought, gut reaction, 20 seconds of defense. Perfect D.
Yeah, it was yuck.
Wait,
Yeah.
I need to know what that drill is. 20 seconds, you got to get like
Oh my
a
God,
stop
it's
in buckets or what?
it's 2-on-2. So it's a player on each wing, and a coach just has the ball at the top of the key. And so for 20 straight seconds, you and one of your teammates have to deny and play, and you're essentially playing 2-on-2, but it's like the hardest 2-on-2 game because you have to not let them catch it. Like that's part, oh my God, it was just like the hardest thing.
You
And
had to like approach, you had to have a hand high. You couldn't let
yes,
them drive middle. You couldn't
yes,
like be too far. It was like perfect defense, but like for 20 seconds.
yes,
And
perfect defense. And if you got down to like 3 seconds and then on the last one you
oh,
didn't approach with your hand up, the clock reset.
it was
So
so
you could
bad.
be out there for, I mean, so essentially it turned into a conditioning drill. You would be absolutely dying if you didn't get it on like the first or second try. Oh God, it was straight misery.
Yeah, it
That
was
sounds
bad.
awful.
All right. Back to the last two questions.
Okay.
Where was the hardest place to play in college and why?
Ah, Rutgers, I would say their students are on top of you and they are mean and ruthless with what they say. And it's like a
And
dark, weird arena. Also, the Carrier Dome was very hard to play.
I think that's hilarious, and I'm laughing because I said Rutgers too, because their fans and
Oh,
the band is so mean.
mean. They are mean.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
that's good.
Um, Last question. You've traveled all over, whether it's for basketball or for fun. Which country has the best food, and what was it?
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's actually a really good question. Hard not to say like Italy, and all of their amazing cuisine. Hard not to think about Puerto Rico though. Well, I mean, those medallas and that's their homemade light beer, Sid.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm like looking at
that's
you
it's
guys
the
like
beer, not the food. She's like, that medalla is
this.
good.
This sounds like there might
Hey,
be a little something extra in this.
no, their food was great too. Yeah, I like to eat. Everywhere was good. Actually, that's not true. Finland, not so great, but
They had good salmon.
yeah, I wasn't, yeah.
Okay. Um,
Great questions.
what about Greece?
Yeah, their food was awesome too. I know it's
Okay.
hard to pick, like, and I also, yeah, I could go on and on about it, but it's all
We
good.
put you on the spot to pick one, but it's impossible apparently, and that's
It
fine.
is. It
I wouldn't
is.
be able to.
I mean, Greece was my honeymoon too, so it's just like everything is better, and you know what I mean? Like, I think situationally it affects
Absolutely.
things, which is why playing at Rutgers was hard because they were freaking good too.
Yeah.
Not, and they had mean fans.
Yeah. Double whammy over there for sure.
Double whammy.
All right, Lex. So we've talked about what it takes to get to college. We've talked about your college experience, an Olympic medal overseas. We've answered some questions about basketball. What are you doing now? Where are you at? How's work? You're an adult. What are you
Yeah,
doing?
debatable on the adult front. But I am back at the old alma mater. I've actually been working in athletic development at Notre Dame for like 6.5 years, which I don't know. It's crazy to think about. But essentially, I help raise money for the athletic department. So think scholarships, financial aid, our annual fund. So that helps teams, anything that's like not budgeted. So if they need a charter flight for a postseason game, right? Teams going on foreign tours, like those are all things that we're fundraising for. So it's all about like the student athlete experience. How do we preserve it? How do we enhance it? Constantly trying to strive and do more. We do not raise money for NIL. That is the one piece that is not in my wheelhouse, which is great.
I have to ask, Leck, you're pregnant with baby number 2.
Yeah.
Do you want to announce on air for the first time for everyone to hear the name for baby number 2?
I wish we knew baby number 2. It's gonna be a boy, so we're looking at some M names potentially, but yeah,
Okay.
we've got a running list. So if any viewers out there want to recommend some names, we're gonna have 2 boys under 2 coming at the end of June here. No, we're super pumped, but yeah, always open for suggestions.
I thought you were like breaking some news on here, and I was about
So
to,
did I.
as soon as we got off of here, I was about to text and be like, "What the? Why didn't I know?" Like, I
My
would've
heart
freaked
dropped.
out.
I was extremely nervous. I'm like, what do I not know about myself that's happening?
Sam is proud of you for not spilling the beans on the baby names. So.
Totally. Oh my God. What would you name it?
I thought I could get it out of you, but I guess not. That's okay.
I don't love anything right now. We've got a list of like 20. I don't love anything. We didn't name Sutton until like day 2 in the hospital.
It is hard. I totally get it. Same with Siddell. We had it narrowed down to like 5 names in the hospital. It's hard.
But how cool is that name? Like, it's got you. It's so unique. Like,
yeah, we've been calling her Dell for short. It works.
oh,
She's become our little Dell.
Dell. I love that. She's a cutie.
All right, let's go ahead and wrap. Hard to say it. I wish we could just keep talking. We might after this, but
I know, right?
We'll go ahead. I know, right? We'll go ahead and wrap it up. Thanks for joining us. It was an awesome episode to have you on and really to talk through some Notre Dame action here with Becca. Having 2 alum on is really awesome for us and our first guest. So thank you for that.
What an honor, you two.
And thank you to you rocked it. I think we're better as a group of 3. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Hey,
This
it's
will
fun.
be a
I'll
trio
come back.
going forward.
I'll come back. Why don't we do this after I have a baby? We'll bring some Medalist lights so Sid can try. And
There you go.
Really get this party started.
And thank you to VA for submitting that question. Again, apologies for waiting a couple months, but we did get it knocked out and answered it for you there. So, and just a reminder for everyone, we'll do more team huddles in the future. So if you've got any questions or comments that you want to hit us up on our social media with, feel free. We're happy to jump on there and tackle those. So open game for whoever wants to submit some.
Thanks, Lec, and thanks, VA, for joining our huddle today. We appreciate it. Catch up with you later, guys.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Beck. Thanks, Lec.
Thanks, guys.
That's the 28.5 final buzzer for today's episode. Don't forget to hit follow and download on your preferred podcast platform to catch every play-by-play. New episodes drop each week throughout the season.
If you've enjoyed our courtside chat, drop us a review or follow us on our social media accounts where you can send us questions that may be selected for our Team Huddle Q&A episodes. And remember, from females who have played the game, the size of the ball matters.